My sister said, "You don't deserve to attend my engagement party." I stayed silent, just smiled, then booked a trip to Hawaii. A week later, her big day collapsed, and my phone blew up with calls. "Hello everyone. Come on in and get comfortable. It's been a while since I've talked about this, but I think it's time. Some stories just need to be told, you know? My name is Leo, and my story starts on what should have been just another Tuesday in my Nashville office. The afternoon sun was slanting through the big windows, dust motes dancing in the light. I was an architect, and my desk was a controlled chaos of blueprints, swatches of fabric, and half-empty cups of coffee. For the last 3 months, my life had been consumed by one project, a project I'd poured my whole heart into, not for a client but for my little sister, Chloe. She was getting engaged, and I wanted to give her the world. As her big brother, that's all I'd ever wanted. And since my world was one of design and structure, I decided to give her the most beautifully designed engagement party Nashville had ever seen. I waived my fee, of course. This was family. I spent nights, long after my regular work was done, sketching 3D models of the rooftop venue we'd chosen. I pictured everything: the string lights twinkling against the city skyline, the scent of magnolias and roses from the floral arrangements I was designing with Brian Walsh, a florist I'd worked with for years. I wanted it to be perfect, a blend of rustic Tennessee charm and modern elegance. I remember tracing the lines of a custom-built sweetheart table on my screen, smiling to myself. I'd called in favors, getting Mr. Ortiz, the notoriously strict venue manager, to agree to let us hang a floral chandelier right over the dance floor. I'd spent hours on the phone with Mrs. Morgan from the catering company, debating the merits of mini hot chicken biscuits versus shrimp and grits shooters. Every detail, from the linen napkins to the font on the place cards, had my fingerprints all over it. I was tired, sure, but it was a happy tired. It was the exhaustion that comes from creating something beautiful for someone you love. That afternoon, I was just finalizing the lighting plan, making sure the glow would be warm and flattering as the sun went down. My phone buzzed on the desk beside a stack of invoices. I glanced at it, expecting a confirmation from a vendor, but it was a text from Chloe. My heart did a little flip, thinking maybe she was sending another excited message about the dress she'd chosen. I picked it up, a smile already on my face, and then I read the words, "Leo, Derek and I have talked. You don't really fit the vibe of the party. You don't deserve to be there." I read it once, then twice. The words didn't seem to connect in my brain. It felt like a language I didn't understand. The air in the room suddenly felt thin, hard to breathe. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead seemed to grow louder, mocking. My stomach twisted into a tight, cold knot. My own sister, the one I was doing all this for, she just cut me out with a text message. Her words were so cold, so clinical, not an ounce of warmth or regret. "You don't deserve to be there." Deserve? What did that even mean? I thought about the late nights, the money I'd spent out of my own pocket on deposits, the creative energy I'd poured into this thing. All of it, in her eyes, didn't even earn me a place at the table. My first instinct was to call her, to hear her say it out loud, to scream, to demand an answer. But as I stared at the screen, my hand shaking slightly, something else took over. A strange calmness washed over me. The hurt was still there, a sharp, physical ache in my chest, but underneath it, something else was forming. A quiet, steely resolve. I put the phone down on the desk, face down, as if to smother the words. I took a deep breath, looked at the beautiful design on my computer screen, her beautiful design, and a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed a declaration of war he never wanted, but one he was damn well going to finish. Plan was taking shape. A plan that didn't involve begging for a seat at her precious party. No, my plan involved a plane ticket to the farthest place I could think of. A place with sand and sun and an ocean big enough to swallow all this bitterness. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that when her perfect day fell to pieces, my phone would light up with calls I would have no intention of answering. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to how it all unraveled. because believe me, it's a story you won't soon forget. After staring at the wall for what felt like an hour, I finally decided I couldn't just let that text message hang in the air. This had to be a mistake, a cruel joke, something. So my first call wasn't to Chloe. It was to my mom, Nancy. She was always the family mediator, the one who smoothed things over. I thought if anyone could make sense of this, it would be her. I found a quiet corner in the office, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. She picked up on the second ring. Leo, honey, how are you? I was just thinking about you. Is the seating chart finalized? Her cheerful, oblivious tone was like a slap in the face. I took a shaky breath. Mom, I just got a text from Chloe. There was a pause. It was just a split second, but it was long enough for me to know. She knew. Oh, she said, her voice a little too casual. What about, sweetie? She told me. She said I'm not invited to the party anymore. I said, the words feeling foreign and ugly in my mouth. She said I don't deserve to be there. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on. I could hear the faint sound of the television in her living room. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its earlier warmth. It was replaced by a firm, almost chiding tone. Leo, you know how your sister gets. She's under a lot of stress. Planning a wedding is a huge deal. Derek's family is, well, they have high expectations. Stress? Mom, I'm the one planning the party. I've been working on this for 3 months. For free. To make it perfect for her. My voice was rising, and I fought to keep it steady. And we all appreciate that, honey, we really do, she said. But her words felt hollow. But sometimes you just have to be the bigger person. You're the big brother. Be tough. Don't make a fuss over every little thing. It's her special day. Let her have it the way she wants it. Be tough. Don't make a fuss. The condescension was breathtaking. She was dismissing my hurt, my work, my very presence, as a little thing. I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. So you're okay with this? You're okay with your son being uninvited from his own sister's engagement party? I'm saying don't make it a bigger deal than it is, she said sharply. The family needs to be united right now, not fighting. Just let it go, Leo. For the family. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hand was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles were white. For the family. The words echoed in my head. I felt utterly alone. It was clear I wasn't going to find any support there. So I did what I should have done in the first place. I called Chloe. I needed to hear it from her. She answered with a clipped, annoyed. What, Leo? I'm busy. I got your text, Chloe. I kept my voice level, professional, like I was talking to a difficult client. She sighed, a sound full of theatrical impatience. Look, I was hoping you'd be mature about this. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You uninvited me from your engagement party, the one I've designed and planned from the ground up. How is that not a big deal? Okay, fine, she snapped. You want the truth? Derek's friends. They're from a different world. They're investment bankers, people with a certain status. And you, with your art projects and dusty blueprints, you just don't fit in. You'd make us look bad. It would be awkward. I was speechless. My art projects? I was a licensed architect with a growing reputation in this city. I designed award-winning spaces. But in her eyes, I was just some dusty embarrassment. Derek and I want a classy, sophisticated event, she continued, her voice dripping with venomous condescension. And you're just not that. It's not personal, it's just about the image we want to project. I can't have my awkward older brother standing in the corner making my fiancé's high-powered boss feel uncomfortable. Not personal. The phrase hung there between us. She had taken my love, my time, my talent, and thrown it back in my face because she thought I was some kind of social liability. My blood ran cold. The image of her, standing in the beautiful space I had created for her, feeling ashamed of me. It was a wound deeper than any I had ever felt. I see, I said, my voice empty of all emotion. Well, Chloe, I hope your party is everything you want it to be. I ended the call before she could say another word. And in that moment I knew. There was no misunderstanding. This wasn't about stress. This was about cruelty. And my family, the people who were supposed to have my back, were standing right behind her, nodding in agreement. You'd think after those 2 phone calls, things couldn't possibly get worse. You'd think my family might just leave me alone to lick my wounds. But you'd be wrong. 3 days went by. 3 days of me just going through the motions. I'd get up, go to work, stare at the plans for Chloe's party on my screen, and feel absolutely nothing. It was just lines on a page now. The joy was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. I stopped making calls to the vendors. I just stopped. I told myself I needed to process, but really, I was paralyzed. Then, on Friday afternoon, my dad called. Stephen Marshall. My dad is a man who thinks of everything in terms of debits and credits. He's an accountant, and his worldview is a giant spreadsheet. He doesn't do emotions well. Leo, he started, no preamble. No, how are you doing? We need to talk about the engagement gift. I froze, pen hovering over a blueprint. The gift? Yes, he said, his tone all business. Your mother and I have decided that a significant cash contribution would be the most appropriate gesture. Chloe and Derek are planning a luxury honeymoon to Italy, and we think $3,000 from you would be a suitable amount. It's your duty as the older brother. I almost laughed. A bitter, ugly sound. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking in protest. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice dripping with an icy calm I didn't know I possessed. You want me to give my sister $3,000 for a party that I am explicitly forbidden from attending? Don't be dramatic, Leo, he scoffed, as if I were a teenager throwing a tantrum. This isn't about the party. This is about family responsibility. It's about showing support. Your sister is starting a new life with a very promising young man. This is your part to play. We all have a part to play. I thought about the small inheritance my grandmother had left me a few years back. Not a fortune, but enough to give me a little security. And my parents knew about it. The timing of this request felt predatory. It wasn't just a gift. It was an obligation they were trying to enforce. Dad, I said, my voice flat, I've done my part. I've given 3 months of my life, my professional expertise which would have cost them a 5-figure sum, and my own money for their party. My part is done. I am not giving them one more dime. His voice hardened. I'm very disappointed in you, Leo. This is selfish. After everything we've done for you, helping with your college fund, supporting your career choice. This is how you repay us? By being petty. He hung up, just like that. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a demand, and I had failed to comply. I wasn't just the embarrassing brother anymore. I was now the ungrateful, selfish son. The weight of it all was crushing. They weren't just pushing me out. They were trying to squeeze every last drop out of me before they did. Later that evening, I was trying to lose myself in some mindless scrolling on my phone. Anything to numb the constant replay of those conversations in my head. And that's when I saw it. A new Instagram post from my cousin, Brenda Reed. The photo was a group of them, all grinning, raising champagne glasses under the trendy neon lights of a bar called the Starlight Lounge. There was Chloe, looking radiant. There was Derek, his arm possessively around her. And a dozen of their friends. The caption read, "Celebrating our beautiful bride-to-be. Best bachelorette party kickoff ever. Love you, Chloe and Derek." My stomach plummeted. Not only was I uninvited from the engagement party, I'd been erased from everything. Every celebration, every moment. The worst part? The Starlight Lounge. It was a new, exclusive rooftop bar that was nearly impossible to get into. I had used my professional connections, pulled strings with the owner who was a former client, just to get them a reservation for what Chloe had told me was a small dinner with her bridesmaids. It was supposed to be my gift to her for that part of the celebration. And she'd taken it, used it, and then held the party without me. Every smiling face in that photo felt like a personal betrayal. I sent Brenda a quick, simple message, my fingers fumbling on the screen. "Hey, saw your post. Looks fun. Was I supposed to be there?" Her reply was almost instant, and its casual cruelty took my breath away. "Oh, hey Leo. It was just a last-minute thing. Didn't think you'd care. Didn't think I'd care." I closed the app. The phone felt heavy and cold in my hand. They didn't just not want me there. They had completely forgotten I existed. Or worse, they just didn't care. I was a tool to be used for my skills, my connections, my money, and then discarded when I was no longer convenient. The last bit of hope I had that this was all some horrible misunderstanding evaporated. This was intentional. This was systematic. And I was done being their doormat. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had a hangover, but I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol. It was the emotional exhaustion, the kind that settles deep in your bones and makes every movement feel heavy. I knew I couldn't stay locked in my apartment, stewing in this toxic mix of anger and hurt. I needed to talk to someone who was actually on my side. So I called Sam. Sam Fisher has been my best friend since college. He's a freelance journalist, sharp and cynical and fiercely loyal. If my family was a cold front of judgment, Sam was a warm bonfire of righteous indignation. We met at our usual spot, a worn-down coffee shop halfway between our apartments that smelled of roasted beans and old books. I slid into the booth, dropped the thick folder of party documents onto the table with a thud, and just let it all out. The text message, the phone call with my mom, my sister's cruel words about me being an embarrassment, my dad's demand for $3,000, the Instagram post. I told him everything, my voice low and steady, but fueled by a white-hot anger that had been simmering for days. Sam just listened. He didn't interrupt. He just nodded, his eyes narrowing as he sipped his black coffee. When I finally finished, the whole sordid tale hanging in the air between us, he leaned forward, his expression grim. "Leo," he said, his voice quiet but intense. "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest. Why are you still doing any of this? Why haven't you burned that entire folder and walked away?" I hesitated. The thought had crossed my mind, of course, but it felt drastic, unthinkable. "They're my family, Sam," I mumbled, even though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. "You don't just walk away from family." "The hell you don't," he shot back, his voice rising a little, causing a woman at the next table to glance over. "They walked away from you. They used you, insulted you, humiliated you, and tried to bill you for the privilege. That's not family, man. That's a toxic waste dump." He jabbed a finger at the folder on the table. "Open it up. Go on." I reluctantly opened the folder. Inside were copies of all the agreements, the work orders, the confirmations. My careful handwriting was in the margins of every page. "Whose name is on those contracts?" Sam asked, his eyes boring into me. "Who is personally and professionally liable if a vendor doesn't get paid? Who did Mr. Ortiz and Mrs. Morgan make their agreements with?" A slow realization began to dawn on me. "Me," I whispered. "My name is on all of them." "Exactly," Sam said, a grim smile playing on his lips. "You're sitting here feeling powerless, like they hold all the cards. But you're wrong, Leo. You've been so busy trying to prove you're worthy of their love that you haven't realized one crucial thing." He leaned in closer. "You hold all the power. You built this entire thing from the ground up. You're the foundation. And what happens when you pull the foundation out from under a house? It collapses," I said, the words sending a thrilling, terrifying shiver down my spine. "It collapses," he repeated, nodding slowly. "You don't owe them a thing. You don't have to scream or fight or beg. You just stop. You step back. And you let them deal with the mess they created." His words were like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. I had been so focused on the emotional pain that I hadn't considered the practical, logistical reality of the situation. I wasn't just the uninvited brother. I was the project manager, the sole point of contact, the architect of the entire event. Without me, it wasn't just a party without a guest. It was a project without a leader. I looked down at my name, signed in black ink on a contract with the venue. Leo Marshall. It looked different now. Stronger. I felt a rush of clarity, a fog of hurt and obligation lifting from my mind. I wasn't gonna let them walk all over me anymore. I looked up at Sam, and for the first time in days, I felt a genuine smile, albeit a cold one, touch my lips. "You're a genius, Sam," I said. He just grinned. "No, I'm just a friend who's tired of seeing good people get treated like dirt. Now, what are you going to do about it?" Leaving the coffee shop, I felt like a different person. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest was gone, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and a chilling sense of purpose. I walked back to my office not with the slumped shoulders of a victim, but with the determined stride of a man on a mission. Sam hadn't just given me advice. He had given me permission to fight back in the only way that would truly matter. I sat down at my desk, the afternoon light now casting long shadows across the room. I didn't hesitate. I pulled up my email, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I drafted 3 separate emails, one for each of the main vendors. Mr. Ortiz at the venue, Mrs. Morgan for the catering, and Brian Walsh, the decorator. The wording was crucial. I kept it professional, polite, and devastatingly final. To Mr. Ortiz, I wrote, "Dear Mr. Ortiz, please be advised that effective immediately, I will be stepping back from my role as the planner and primary contact for the Marshall engagement party on the 21st. Due to unforeseen personal circumstances, I am no longer involved with the management of this event. All future communications, logistical questions, and final confirmations will need to be directed to my sister, Ms. Chloe Marshall. Her contact information is attached. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Leo Marshall." I copied and pasted the same basic template for the other 2, changing only the names. I didn't offer explanations. I didn't apologize. I simply and cleanly severed the ties. It was like performing surgery, a precise cut to remove a toxic growth. I attached Chloe's phone number and email address to each one. My finger hovered over the send button for a moment. This was it. There was no going back. I took a deep breath and clicked it. 1, 2, 3, done. The silence in my office afterwards was profound. It was the silence of a finished chapter. It didn't take long. Within 15 minutes, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Morgan, the caterer. Her voice was laced with concern. "Leo, I just got your email. Is everything all right? Honey, you're the only one who knows the timeline for the hot appetizers. Your sister won't know what to do." "I'm sure she'll figure it out, Mrs. Morgan," I said, my voice calm. "Thank you for your concern, but my decision is final." Next was a text from Brian Walsh, the decorator. "Leo, you can't be serious. Who's going to supervise the floral arch installation? Your sister thought peonies grew in Tennessee in October." I didn't reply. The most telling response came from Mr. Ortiz. He was a man of few words, but his email was clear. "Mr. Marshall, your name is on the signed contract. You are the responsible party. I trust this will not become an issue." I replied simply, "Mr. Ortiz, I have fulfilled my design and planning obligations. The execution is now in the hands of the client. I have every confidence they will manage it." It was a bluff, of course. I had zero confidence. But my name on the contract was for the booking and the deposit, which I had already paid. The final payment and on-site management were now Chloe's problem. With the logistical time bomb set, I moved on to the final phase of my plan. I opened a new browser tab and typed, "Flights to Hawaii." The idea had been a fantasy, a fleeting thought of escape. Now it was going to be my reality. I wasn't just stepping back from their party. I was removing myself from the blast zone entirely. I found a direct flight from Nashville to Honolulu. It departed at 7 a.m. on Saturday, the morning of the party. It was perfect. I pictured myself, sitting on a plane, climbing high above the clouds, while down below, my sister was about to discover what happens when you take the architect for granted. I entered my information, my heart pounding with a wild mixture of fear and exhilaration. My finger hovered over the confirm purchase button. This was more than just a vacation. This was a statement. This was me choosing myself, choosing my sanity, choosing freedom. I clicked it. The confirmation page loaded. The email with my itinerary pinged in my inbox. It was real. I was going to Hawaii. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long, slow breath I felt like I'd been holding for months. The strings had been cut, and I was finally, truly free. The next few days were strangely peaceful. It was the calm of a decision made, of a path chosen. The constant, low-level anxiety that had been my companion for weeks simply evaporated. I went to work and focused on my actual clients, the ones who valued my expertise and treated me with respect. I found myself enjoying the simple mechanics of my job again, the clean lines of a blueprint, the challenge of a difficult structural problem. My phone was quiet. My family, it seemed, was too busy either ignoring my withdrawal or, more likely, believing in their own arrogance that they could handle everything themselves. They hadn't needed me at the party, right? So surely they didn't need me to run it. Let them think that. The evening before the party, the evening before my flight, I was in my apartment packing. The process was methodical, almost meditative. I laid out a few pairs of linen shorts, some light cotton shirts, my swim trunks. I packed a thick novel I'd been meaning to read for months. It felt surreal, packing for paradise while a storm of my own making was about to break over my family. I folded a blue shirt and placed it carefully in my suitcase. As I did, my phone buzzed on the bed. I glanced over. It was a text from my mom. "Leo, your father tells me you still haven't sent the gift money. Don't be so selfish. This is for your sister." I stared at the message. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. Even now, after everything, their primary concern was the money. Not my feelings, not my absence, just the check they felt they were owed. A month ago, that text would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and anger. Now, I felt nothing. It was like reading a message meant for someone else. I picked up the phone, held my finger down on the message, and without a second thought, I deleted it. I didn't even bother to block her number yet. I wanted them to have a way to reach me when the panic set in. It was a cruel thought, maybe, but it felt like justice. I continued packing. I zipped up the suitcase, the sound decisive and final in the quiet apartment. I walked over to my desk and looked at the corner where the folder for Chloe's party used to sit. I had taken it to the office and filed it away in a deep cabinet drawer, buried under old projects. It was a physical act of putting the past behind me. I stood by my window looking out at the Nashville skyline. The lights of the city were just starting to twinkle to life. Somewhere out there, on a rooftop I knew intimately, final preparations were supposedly underway for a party. I wondered what it looked like right now. Was it the elegant, magical space I had designed, or was it already showing signs of neglect? I poured myself a small glass of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the light. I raised the glass to the window, a silent toast. It wasn't a toast to their failure, not really. It was a toast to my freedom, to choosing peace over toxic obligation, to the simple, profound act of walking away from people who don't see your worth. I took a sip. The bourbon was warm and smooth, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt a genuine sense of peace settle over me. The chaos would come tomorrow. The angry calls, the panic texts, the accusations. But they wouldn't find me. By the time their perfect world started to crumble, I would be 30,000 feet in the air, heading west towards the sunrise and a new beginning. And they would be left to stand in the ruins of a party they got, but a family they had so carelessly thrown away. Of course, I wasn't there to see the implosion myself. I pieced it all together later from a few sources. A very apologetic and very detailed email from Mr. Ortiz, a long, rambling voicemail from Mrs. Morgan, and a few juicy tidbits that Sam managed to pick up from mutual acquaintances. But as I sat on a beach in Waikiki a few days later, listening to the waves, this is the picture I put together of that disastrous Saturday evening. The chaos apparently started early. Chloe, believing that the event would magically run itself based on my detailed plans, didn't arrive at the venue until an hour before the guests were scheduled to. She showed up not to supervise, but to get her hair and makeup touched up in the bridal suite. Derek, her fiancé, was even worse. He was at a bar nearby with his groomsmen, pre-gaming, as he called it. Mr. Ortiz, the venue manager, was the first to realize something was terribly wrong. He had my timeline, which called for a final sound check at 4 p.m. and a lighting check at 5 p.m. But with no one there to direct the technicians, They were just standing around, looking confused. The custom floral chandelier, the centerpiece of my design, was still in pieces on the floor because Brian Walsh, the decorator, had no one to sign off on the rigging. He tried calling Chloe. No answer. He tried Derek. It went straight to voicemail. When the guests started to arrive at 6 p.m., they walked into a scene of low-grade panic. Half the tables were missing their centerpieces. The elegant, rustic chic vibe I had planned was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Brian, in a desperate attempt to fill the space, had put out a few sad-looking balloons that completely clashed with the color scheme. Guests were whispering, looking around with confused expressions. Then came the food disaster. Mrs. Morgan, the caterer, was a consummate professional, but she could only work with the information she was given. A week prior, after I had stepped back, Derek had called her directly. He'd made several cost-saving changes to the menu without consulting Chloe, or apparently anyone with taste. He swapped the popular hot chicken sliders for cold, pre-made pinwheel sandwiches. He canceled the shrimp and grit station to save money on a chef. The result was a sad, limp buffet that looked more appropriate for a corporate lunch meeting than a high-end engagement party. Mrs. Morgan told me later she tried to reason with him, but he insisted he knew best, that he wanted a more modern, minimalist menu. The guests were not impressed. The word tacky was reportedly overheard more than once. The breaking point, the moment the entire evening curdled from awkward to catastrophic, happened around 7:30. Chloe, finally emerging from her suite and seeing the state of her party for the first time, reportedly let out a shriek of horror. She marched over to the sad-looking buffet, picked up a pinwheel sandwich with 2 fingers as if it were a dead insect, and turned to find Derek. She found him by the bar, laughing loudly with his friends. According to Sam's source, who was standing nearby, the confrontation was loud, public, and utterly mortifying. "What is this?" Chloe screeched, shoving the sandwich in his face. "This is my party, and it looks like a cheap funeral." Derek, his face red from alcohol and anger, shot back, "Well, maybe if your useless brother hadn't bailed on us, things would be different." "My brother?" she yelled, her voice echoing across the rooftop. "You're the one who told me to uninvite him. You said he was an embarrassment and that you could handle everything. I could have if you weren't so busy getting your picture taken," he snarled. "This is your fault, Chloe. You and your stupid, dramatic family." They stood there, the so-called happy couple, screaming at each other in front of all their friends, family, and Derek's high-powered boss. The party came to a standstill. The music faded. Everyone just stared as the perfect facade they had tried so hard to build crumbled into dust right before their eyes. Guests started to quietly slip away. Mr. Ortiz began directing his staff to start cleaning up, even though the party was supposed to go on for another 3 hours. The beautiful, magical evening I had designed had become a public spectacle of failure and humiliation, and the architects of that failure had no one to blame but themselves. While all of this was unfolding back in Nashville, I was blissfully unaware, sitting in the sterile quiet of the airport terminal. It was 6:30 a.m. The sun was just a pale pink smear on the horizon. I was sipping a lukewarm coffee from a paper cup, watching other travelers hurry past, their faces a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. My phone, which I had kept on silent but not yet on airplane mode, lay face down on the empty seat beside me. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching a movie of my own life. I knew the party was starting soon. I knew the chaos was likely beginning to bubble, but it all felt a million miles away. Around 6:45, just as they announced pre-boarding for my flight, the phone vibrated. A single, sharp buzz. I glanced at it. A text from my mom. "The party is a mess. Call me now." The tone was no longer chiding or condescending. It was pure panic. I stared at the message, a cold satisfaction spreading through my chest. I didn't reply. I just watched the screen. A minute later, it buzzed again. "My dad. Leo. Where are you? The caterer is saying the order is wrong. Fix this. Fix this. Not please help, but an order." As if I were a disobedient employee. The arrogance was stunning. Then the floodgates opened. The phone began to vibrate continuously, a frantic, desperate dance on the vinyl seat. It was a barrage, a digital assault. A text from Chloe. Leo, where are you? The flowers are wrong, everything is wrong. Another from Chloe. Mr. Ortiz is looking for you, everyone is asking for you, you have to come here. And another, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Just please come and fix this. I'm begging you. The all caps, the frantic punctuation. I could almost hear the shrill panic in her voice. It was the sound of a spoiled child who had finally broken her favorite toy and realized no one was going to buy her a new one. Then the call started. My mom's face popped up on the screen. I silenced it. Then my dad. Silenced. Then Chloe over and over again. I watched her picture appear and disappear. Her smile in the photo a bitter irony. She was probably standing in the middle of her nightmare, frantically jabbing at her phone, her perfectly manicured nails clicking on the screen. A string of texts from my dad came through in quick succession. This is your responsibility. You signed the contract. You are embarrassing this family. I am ordering you to get down here and salvage this situation. I had to laugh at that one. Ordering me. He had no idea I was sitting less than 50 feet from a gate that would take me thousands of miles away from his orders and his disappointment. The announcement for my boarding group came over the loudspeaker. I stood up, grabbing my carry-on bag. The phone was still vibrating, a constant, buzzing testament to their desperation. It was a symphony of consequences. As I walked towards the gate, one last text came through. It was from Chloe. You've ruined my life. I hate you. I stopped for a second, right before the gate agent. I looked down at the message. A week ago, those words would have shattered me. They would have felt like a mortal wound. But now, they were just words on a screen. The pathetic, last gasp tantrum of a person who was finally facing the fallout of her own cruelty. I didn't feel hatred back. I didn't feel anything at all. Just emptiness. The emptiness of a space where a family used to be. I looked up at the gate agent, handed her my boarding pass, and smiled. As I walked down the jet bridge, I took my phone out one last time. I powered it off completely. The screen went dark, and the frantic buzzing finally stopped. I was done. The show was over, and I was leaving the cleanup to them. Thank you for staying with me until now. Please show your support by liking this video and typing 1 in the comments below. It lets me know that you've given me a like and are here with me on this journey. Your encouragement is a huge source of motivation. Comment number 1 below and stay with me as I continue my story. Landing in Honolulu was like stepping into another world. The air was warm and thick with the smell of salt and flowers. As I took the shuttle to my hotel in Waikiki, I kept my phone off. I didn't want to know what was happening back in Nashville. That was the old world. This was the new one. For 3 days, I lived in a state of blissful ignorance. I checked into a small hotel with a balcony overlooking the impossibly blue Pacific. I spent my mornings walking on the beach, letting the warm water wash over my ankles, feeling the tension of the last few months literally dissolve into the ocean. I ate poke bowls from a food truck, read my book under the shade of a palm tree, and just breathed. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't an architect, a son, or a brother. I was just Leo, and it was wonderful. I started to feel the anger and hurt scab over. It wasn't gone, but it was manageable. I thought, okay, this is it. I've survived. I've made my point. Now I can just heal and move on. But my family, I would soon learn, was not done with me yet. On the 4th day, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the surfers ride the waves, when I finally decided to turn my phone back on. I was expecting a flood of angry voicemails and texts. I was prepared for that. What I wasn't prepared for was the message from Sam. It wasn't a text. It was a screenshot of a post from a Facebook group called Nashville Community Forum. The post was from my sister, Chloe. My blood ran cold as I read it. Her profile picture showed her looking sad and demure. The post itself was a masterpiece of manipulation and outright lies. I need to share a very painful story as a warning to others in our community, she began. As many of you know, My fiancé and I recently had our engagement party. Unfortunately, the event was sabotaged from the inside by my own brother, Leo Marshall of Marshall Designs. For months, we believed he was helping us, but it seems he was suffering from a severe mental health crisis, fueled by jealousy over my happiness. He deliberately messed up orders, gave vendors the wrong information, and then disappeared on the day of the event to watch it all burn down. It was a malicious and calculated act that has left my family heartbroken and my professional reputation in tatters. I'm sharing this because I don't want another family to go through what we have. Please be cautious when dealing with him. We are praying he gets the help he so desperately needs. I had to read it 3 times to fully absorb the venom. Sabotaged? Mental health crisis? Jealousy? She had taken the disaster she created and twisted it, painting me as an unstable, vindictive monster and herself as the poor, innocent victim. My hands started shaking. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. She had used my full name, my business name. She had posted this in a community forum with over 50,000 members. This was a public execution of my character and my career. I scrolled through the comments, my stomach churning. There were hundreds of them. So sorry you went through this, Chloe. Sending prayers. What a monster. I'll be sure to never use Marshall Designs. Thank you for your bravery in sharing this. I hope your brother gets locked up. It was a witch hunt, and I was the witch. She had taken my quiet act of self-preservation and turned it into a public smear campaign. The peaceful bubble I had built around myself in Hawaii burst instantly. The anger came roaring back, hotter and more intense than before. This was no longer just about a party. This was about my livelihood, my reputation, my future. She wasn't content with just pushing me out. She was trying to burn my entire world to the ground. My phone buzzed again. It was an email. The subject line read, "Cancellation of consultation." It was from a potential new client, a big one I had been excited about. The email was short and cold. "Mr. Marshall, in light of some disturbing information that has recently come to our attention regarding your professional conduct, we will be canceling our upcoming meeting. We wish you the best." The best. I felt a wave of nausea. She was actually succeeding. Her lies were spreading, and the damage was already being done. The paradise around me, the blue sky, the gentle waves, the warm breeze, suddenly felt like a cage. I was thousands of miles away, completely powerless, while my sister was systematically destroying my life. My first instinct was pure, unadulterated panic. I wanted to fly back to Nashville immediately, to stand in that forum and scream the truth. But I knew that would only make me look more unhinged, playing right into Chloe's narrative. I felt trapped, my reputation being shredded by lies while I sat helpless on an island. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial, but I managed to call the one person I knew would be in my corner. "Sam," I said, my voice cracking as soon as he answered. "You're not going to believe what she's done." "I've seen it, Leo," he said, his voice grim and steady. "I've been watching it all day. Don't respond. Don't engage. Don't do anything until you talk to me. This is what she wants. She wants you to have a public meltdown." Sam's calmness was the anchor I desperately needed. He was right. A frantic, emotional response was a losing game. This wasn't a family fight anymore. It was a public relations war, and I needed a strategy. "What do I do, Sam?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "She's telling people I'm mentally ill. She's ruining my business." "We fight back," he said, and I could hear the determination in his voice. Not with emotion, but with facts. Cold, hard, verifiable facts. "You're the architect, right? You have the blueprints. You have the paper trail." Over the next 2 hours we talked, planned, and strategized. Sam, with his journalist's brain, was methodical. He told me to go back through every email, every text, every invoice related to the party. He wanted a timeline. He wanted evidence. While I was doing that, he said he would make a few calls. He wouldn't tell me to whom, just that he had a few contacts in the industry who value professionalism above all else. So that's what I did. I spent the rest of my day in Hawaii, not on the beach, but hunched over my laptop in my hotel room. I compiled everything. My initial proposal to Chloe, the countless emails confirming details, the invoices I had paid out of my own pocket, the texts where she praised my work before Derek got in her ear. I even found the text where I had sent her the details for the reservation at the Starlight Lounge. It was a mountain of evidence that proved I had been nothing but a dedicated, professional, and loving brother. I sent it all to Sam in a zipped file labeled, The Truth. Meanwhile, Sam was working his magic. He reached out to Mr. Ortiz, Mrs. Morgan, and Brian Walsh. He introduced himself as a freelance journalist working on a story about event planning in Nashville. He didn't even have to mention my name at first. He just asked them about their experience with the Marshall engagement party. He called me back that evening. "It's better than I thought," he said, a note of triumph in his voice. "They're all furious. Not at you, but at your sister and her fiancé. They felt their professional reputations were tarnished by that disaster. They're more than willing to talk, as long as I keep their names out of it to avoid a messy lawsuit." Mr. Ortiz had apparently told Sam, Leo Marshall's plans were meticulous. The failure of that event was a catastrophic failure of on-site management by the client. Mrs. Morgan had detailed how Derek had overridden her professional recommendations and insisted on the cheaper, terrible food. Brian had a string of unanswered texts to Chloe from the day of the party. Sam spent the next day writing. He didn't write an angry Facebook post. He wrote a polished, professional article. He laid out the story piece by piece, not as a messy family drama, but as a case study in professional integrity versus client negligence. He used my evidence, the emails, the timelines, and interwove it with the anonymous, damning testimony from the vendors. He painted a picture of a dedicated professional who was thrown under the bus by a narcissistic client. The headline was a work of art, Nashville Event Disaster. How a planner's vision was derailed by his own family. He sent me the draft. Reading it, I felt a surge of hope. It was my truth, told in a way that was undeniable. We even had a friend of ours who was a lawyer give it a quick read to make sure we weren't opening ourselves up to any liability. He gave it the green light. "Are you ready?" Sam asked me over the phone. "Do it," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "Let's burn her lies to the ground." Sam published the article on a popular local news blog he freelanced for. And then we waited. The article landed like a bomb. It spread through the Nashville social scene faster than gossip at a hair salon. Sam had posted the link directly in the comments section of Chloe's original post in the Nashville Community Forum. The effect was immediate and devastating for her. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. The tide of public sympathy, which had been so strongly in her favor, turned against her with a vengeance. People started dissecting her original post, pointing out the manipulative language. The anonymous quotes from the highly respected Nashville vendors were the killing blow. Her story about a mentally unstable brother sabotaging her party fell apart under the weight of hard evidence. The comments on her post turned from sympathetic to vicious. "Wow, so you stiffed your brother and then tried to ruin his career? Classy. I was at that party. It was a disaster. Now I know why. Shame on you, Chloe Marshall. This is character assassination. I hope your brother sues you for defamation." By the time I flew back to Nashville a few days later, the digital war was over, and Chloe had lost spectacularly. The first thing I did was have my lawyer friend send her a cease and desist letter regarding her defamatory statements. Her post was deleted within the hour. But the real-world consequences were just beginning to unfold. Sam kept me updated. The first domino to fall was the engagement itself. Apparently, the public humiliation was the final straw for Derek. The screaming match at the party had exposed the cracks in their relationship, but my counteroffensive had shattered it completely. He was a man obsessed with image and status, and Chloe had just become a social pariah. He called it off, telling mutual friends that he couldn't be associated with that kind of drama. The second domino was even more satisfying. Derek's family, who were as image-conscious as he was, were horrified by the whole affair. They had apparently been planning to invest a significant amount of money into a boutique clothing business Chloe wanted to start. After the article came out and their son broke off the engagement, they pulled their funding completely. Her dream of becoming a business owner, bankrolled by her fiancé's wealthy parents, went up in smoke. My own family tried to do damage control, but it was too late. My mother called me, leaving a rambling, tearful voicemail. "Leo, this has gone too far," she cried. "Your sister is heartbroken. You're tearing this family apart. You need to stop this." Stop what? I hadn't done anything but defend myself with the truth. The fact that she still saw me as the aggressor told me everything I needed to know. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. My dad sent a curt text, "We need to meet. This has affected my business connections." I didn't reply. Their attempts to guilt and command me had lost all their power. The most potent form of karma, however, came from the professional community. The story of the party became a cautionary tale among Nashville's event industry. The vendors I had worked with, now fiercely loyal to me after I had been vindicated, quietly spread the word. The Marshall family, and Chloe in particular, became known as clients from hell. No reputable florist, caterer, or planner would touch them. Their social standing, which they had so desperately tried to elevate by casting me out, was now in the gutter. I didn't feel a rush of triumphant joy. I didn't gloat. What I felt was a profound sense of relief. Quiet, deep satisfaction. It was the feeling of a great weight being lifted, of a skewed world finally righting itself. I had weathered the storm. I had stood my ground, armed with nothing but the truth, and I had won. I hadn't sought revenge, not really. I had simply demanded respect. And in the end, the world had given it to me, while the people who tried to deny me that respect were left with nothing but the bitter taste of their own consequences. I started to understand that the best revenge isn't loud and fiery. It's quiet, decisive, and best served by simply letting people lie in the beds they've made for themselves. In the weeks and months that followed, something strange and wonderful began to happen. The story, which I thought would be a permanent stain on my professional life, turned into the complete opposite. It became my calling card. Instead of being seen as unstable or problematic, I was seen as a man of integrity, a professional who wouldn't compromise on quality and who had the guts to stand up for himself. My phone started ringing again, but this time, it wasn't with panicked calls from my family. It was with calls from potential clients. The first big one was from the organizers of a major local music festival. The head organizer, a formidable woman named Sarah, met me for coffee. "I read that article about you," she said, stirring her cappuccino. "Frankly, I was impressed. Anyone who can keep their cool and use facts to dismantle a smear campaign like that is someone I want managing my $250,000 staging budget." We signed a contract that day. It was the biggest project of my career. After that, the floodgates opened. A young couple who were planning their wedding reached out. "We want to work with someone who values honesty," the bride-to-be told me. "After reading your story, we knew you were our guy." A tech company hired me to design their new corporate headquarters, not just for my architectural skills, but because, as the CEO put it, we value people with a strong backbone. My pain had been forged into a new kind of professional armor. It had become a testament to my character. I realized I had a choice. I could let the betrayal define me and make me bitter, or I could use it as a foundation to build something new, something better. I chose to build. My little one-man operation, Marshall Designs, started to grow. I couldn't handle all the work myself anymore. 6 months after the Hawaii trip, I hired my first employee, a bright young architectural graduate named Maria. A few months after that, I hired a project manager. I leased a small, sunlit office in a renovated warehouse downtown, not far from the rooftop where my life had taken such a dramatic turn. I made a promise to myself that my company would be the antithesis of the toxic environment my family had created. We operated on principles of respect, transparency, and mutual support. There was no backstabbing, no drama. We celebrated each other's successes. When we made mistakes, we owned them and fixed them together. My business wasn't just a way to make a living. It was my sanctuary. My personal life began to heal as well. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during the months I was consumed by the party planning. And I met someone. Her name was Clara, a landscape artist with a kind smile and a calm, gentle energy that was a balm to my soul. On our third or fourth date, I told her the whole story. I laid it all out, expecting her to maybe see me as damaged goods. She just listened patiently, and when I was done, she reached across the table and took my hand. "It sounds like you went through hell," she said softly. "But what I hear is a story about a man who found his own worth. That's not baggage, Leo. That's strength." Looking back, the irony was staggering. By trying to declare me unworthy, by trying to cast me out, my family had inadvertently propelled me to a level of success and happiness I had never imagined. They thought my worth was tied to their approval. But by setting me free from that need, they had allowed me to discover my own value. I was building a new empire, a professional one built on integrity, and a personal one built on genuine love and respect. And in this new empire, I was the king, and the ghosts of my past were not even allowed at the gates. About a year passed. A year of hard work, healing, and quiet, steady happiness. My firm had just won a prestigious local design award for the music festival staging. My relationship with Clara was the most stable and loving partnership I had ever known. Life was good. It was more than good. It was peaceful. I had completely cut off contact with my parents and sister. Their numbers were blocked. Their letters returned unopened. They were a chapter of my life that was firmly, irrevocably closed. One sunny afternoon, I was on site at our newest project, a sleek, modern boutique hotel being built in the heart of the city. It was a career-defining project, the kind of thing I used to dream about while sketching in my college dorm room. I was standing on what would be the fifth-floor terrace, discussing a structural detail with the foreman, the city of Nashville sprawling out below us. As I gestured towards a support beam, my gaze drifted down to the street below, and that's when I saw her. It was Chloe. I almost didn't recognize her at first. The confident, immaculately dressed social climber was gone. In her place was a woman who looked tired. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing a drab, ill-fitting uniform for a nearby cafe, the kind of place that churns out coffee for office workers. She was carrying a heavy-looking trash bag out to the dumpster in the alleyway. She paused for a moment, pushing a stray strand of hair out of her face, and her shoulders slumped with a weariness that seemed to go soul-deep. The arrogance was gone. The condescension was gone. All that was left was a hollowed-out exhaustion. Our eyes didn't meet. She had no idea I was hundreds of feet above her, watching from the terrace of a building that represented everything I had built since she tried to tear me down. A strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't pity. It wasn't even anger. It was nothing. Just a quiet, detached acknowledgement of a life that was no longer connected to mine. She was just a person on a street, living out the consequences of her choices, just as I was living out the rewards of mine. The foreman asked me a question, and I turned away from the window, back to my blueprints, back to my life. I didn't give her a second glance. The sighting wasn't a dramatic climax. There was no confrontation, no final, cutting words. And in its own way, that was the most powerful ending of all. Her fate, her struggles, her unhappiness. They no longer had any emotional hold on me. She had become irrelevant. As I drove home that evening, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I thought about the lesson I had learned. I had spent so much of my life believing that family was an unbreakable bond, an unconditional source of love and support. But I had learned the hard way that sometimes, family is just the people you happen to share blood with. The real bonds, the ones that matter, are the ones built on respect, on kindness, on mutual appreciation. I had tried so hard to be the perfect brother, the perfect son. But the real victory wasn't in getting revenge. It was in the moment I stopped trying to earn their love and started giving myself my own respect. That's the foundation I built my new life on. And unlike the party I designed for my sister, this was one structure that would never, ever collapse. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. It's not an easy one to tell, but sharing it helps. I have to wonder, have any of you ever had to make the difficult choice to walk away from family to protect your own peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and your support mean the world. And if you found some strength in my story, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe for more. Take care of yourselves.